Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. So this class is I'm not a broker, I'm not a realtor. So I'm not going to go through like all the ethical things like that you would know or you want to know on the contract based on as a realtor. But what I want to do is go over the purchase agreement in what escrow is looking at through my eyes of escrow. Like, what am I needing? What am I need to look for? What do you need to make sure it's in there for us to process your escrows according to what your terms are? These are our instructions. So I know a lot of people sometimes think the escrow instructions that I do are in superseding your contract, and they're not. Like, my escrow instructions are literally based on everything that's in here. So when I get this purchase agreement, it should be black and white to me. Like, if I'm a neutral third party, obviously you've been negotiating, you're going back and forth in counters. But when it comes to me, like, all your terms, you should be able to hand it to anyone and they know exactly what the terms are. And I've had a lot of times where we go back to the realtors because the verbiage isn't clear. It's like, we're going to do termite. I'm like, does that mean report and completion? Does that mean just report? Does that mean section 1 and 2? Like, it's not very specific. So I would recommend when you're going through the contract, you're going through everything with a fine tooth comb to make sure that if anyone picked it up, that everyone's in agreement. Because we go back and then the buyer's like, oh, I didn't know that that's what that meant. I didn't know that that's what I was signing. And I'm like, wait, okay, we got to back up here and then do an addendum. But it would be nice if we went through it to make sure, like, and I know the same thing. The reason why this purchase agreement is highlighted this way is because this is from an escrow real estate contract class. So it was like a 4-hour class of literally just escrow officers, escrow teams, escrow staff, all like held by the Escrow Institute of California. And this is what we look for. This is highlighted for escrow. But it's good to know both sides, right? In case, like, you see something that I don't see, or I see something you don't see. So I always recommend looking at everything. So I'm going to go through not every single thing on here because you don't need to know all the stuff that I'm looking for, but there are a lot of things that realtors are missing when I'm getting these new contracts. Like, allocation of costs is like my main page, right? I'm here to make sure all the fees are in the escrow, in the contract. So that allocation of cost page needs to have all the fees, the amounts, the boxes checked. I got an escrow once and none of those boxes were checked. Not even escrow fee, like who's to pay for it wasn't marked. It was fully executed. So
can I ask you a quick?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Who pays? The buyer, the seller, both. And down here, it's everybody pays each their own. So what does both mean?
I'll go through it, but both means 50-50. Both is,
so they have it twice.
Yeah, both is 50-50. You can also, people are still putting in their contracts, each pay their own.
Yeah.
Which is because when it comes to the Department of Financial Protection Services, we can't give discounts to one. Everything has to be neutral. Everything has to be the same. So if you ask for an escrow discount, I have to discount both sides. Like, it's not like I can just, give you a discount. I have to discount both unless it's each pay their own. Then each party is paying their own fees.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm still getting both. But both in the contract is 50-50. They're each paying that fee. So we're splitting it.
Right. It's still, to me, even after you said all that, it's still me.
Oh, no. I'll go through that page in detail because, again, that's probably my most important page when I go through the contract. But okay, so let's get started, guys. Okay, so obviously, page 1, most important too for everybody in the transaction. I know this sounds crazy, but in the beginning of this page, the property address. Make sure you're using the right street address for the units. I've had a lot of escrows come in, especially with condos right now. If you have any condos that are HOA, I always recommend getting the legal investing or at least looking at the tax roll of that property. So right now I have a unit in escrow. Everything on my contract says this unit is number 2. I get the prelim and my legal description, it says unit 10. So I'm like, where's the discrepancy? Apparently this complex is on 2 streets. So the builders put 1 through 10 on one side and 1 through 10 on the other side, but the legal descriptions is like 1 through 20.
Oh.
So, I mean, title's willing to fix it for me, but again, like, you don't want to draw up all your contracts and docs and not have the correct unit number or the correct street number. I have another file in escrow where it's got a typo from the tax assessor for 25 years. It's had the wrong street address on it. and I had to talk to the assessor's office for like an hour to make sure this is getting fixed. Like it's insane. So when you have a new listing, a new offer, it's so important to verify that street address, verify your clients who are signing as a seller, to make sure you have the right entity or the right individual signing as a seller. When you have your buyers' names on the contract, I can't tell you how many times when we get into escrow, I match exactly what's on your purchase agreement. And the buyers will call me and be like, oh, all your escrow paperwork says Chris, but my name's Christopher. I'm like, well, I put what's on the contract. I mean, your realtor did that, and I'm matching exactly what your realtor did. So maybe ask your clients how their name should be or how they want it to be. I also have one client, his name is Theodore, then on the purchase agreement, it said Ted. And the lender on that one wanted a full addendum to correct it to Theodore because there was so much of a differentiation between those two. So just double check names. I know it sounds silly, like that should be common sense, right? But you never know. You just want it to be exact. You want it to be right because it's so much more work, right? To go back and do addendums and get everyone to sign the new forms or revisions, or you have to do a new contract. So double check names, double check street addresses. I think it's important, even if it takes a couple extra seconds, then you don't have to go back and try to fix something that was submitted wrong or incorrect or needs to be changed. Agency disclosure, you guys, that's all your responsibility. I won't even touch that. But down here, so this is a huge portion of the contract I spend a lot of time on, right, as escrow. I'm looking for the purchase price. I'm looking to see if that all cash box is marked so that I know if there's any financing or not. The initial deposit. So it's automatically put in here, it's by wire transfer. I still have people call, I literally just got off the phone with someone. Can I send a check instead of a wire? I'm like, well, that would have been the time to decipher the way you wanted to submit your payment, right? So check with your clients, check with your buyers. Okay, here's where the earnest deposit is. You're agreeing to send into escrow, whether it's a flat amount or a percentage of the purchase price. And then ask them, are you prepared? Are you willing to do a wire transfer? Are you able to set that up? Make sure that you'll be ready to set that up within 3 days of the fully accepted offer. Because that's another thing clients don't seem to understand is once it's accepted, they have 3 days. When I tell them that, they're like, no one ever told me that. I'm not doing that. No one said I had to do that. So maybe bring that up when you're going through the purchase agreement with your buyers. The EMD is automatically set for wire and should be transferred within 3 days. So you're going to hear from escrow. They're going to reach out to you, so they're not blindsided and upset when I call and ask for money. Increased deposit. We don't have a lot of increased deposit, but same thing. Just make sure your clients are aware. Make sure escrow knows the date. Like we're going to have an increased deposit on the right. Like, is there a certain date that we need to have it by? Is it within 10 days, 20 days? I mean, increased deposit isn't normal. We don't get a lot of those, but every once in a while you might have them. Loan amounts. I'm looking for the loan amount. Whatever is in the purchase agreement, whatever you guys have in your contract when you're doing this with the buyer, escrow is going to match. I'm going to copy unless I know that it's 20% or 80% of whatever the purchase price is. I'll do the calculations. But if it's just a random loan amount that I can't calculate if the purchase price has changed, then whatever's in here is what I'm going to use. And I know it's going to change. Like 99% of the time we open escrow and that loan amount typically tends to change because people have countered out prices. They've countered other costs or countered other things, or the buyers decided they want to change their financing structure. So it does change, but we always amend this loan amount at closing. The buyer will sign an amendment for the loan amount, the interest rate, the term, and the lender. Because there's a lot of mortgage brokers who are brokering it out too. So all those terms will finalize at closing. A lot of times we open escrow and I match what's in the contract and they'll be like, oh, I changed my loan amount. This is wrong. I'm not going to sign it. Like, well, it's in the purchase contract, but we'll amend it once we get the final loan amount because it can adjust and fluctuate depending on where we're at. Are there credits? Is the appraisal in? Is it out? You know what I mean? Things change. But my escrow instructions are to literally match this. So I'm matching, these are my instructions and I'm basically copying what's in there. And my verbiage on the escrow instructions is telling me, the escrow holder, here's what you're gonna do. Based on this contract, you're gonna debit this. This is the loan amount, this is the purchase price. So it's literally me writing an instruction to myself based on what I've received. So we're gonna match whatever's in here or whatever's in the counters too, obviously, yes. Additional financing, again, not something we typically see, but just make sure to fill in as much detail as you can if there is any additional financing. Occupancy type. I have had this missed a lot, actually. People forget to mark if this is secondary or if it's an investment. Otherwise, to me, if it's a primary residence, then everything's going to be primary. We're going to use the address as a, address after close of escrow for the buyer, unless the buyer gives me a different instruction. But occupancy type, definitely something to check if this is going to be their primary, if this is a secondary home, or if it's an investment home. I've had lenders that have me go back to get that filled in, especially if the lender knows this is a secondary home or an investment property. Balance of down payment, so the cash to close. Again, this isn't the total cash to close. This is just based on the terms of the financing, the purchase price, the loan amount, the EMD, and your purchase price. Did I say purchase price? So balance of down payment is just their cash for the loan for the property that they're purchasing. But that doesn't include obviously closing costs, fees, things. I have a lot of buyers think that okay, I'm ready to wire in my final balance that's on here, but there's costs and things that come with that, taxes, interest, things like that. So balance based on, your terms of financing, the purchase price, things of that nature. And then purchase price total. Of course, we all know, hopefully, with the purchase price total, and we don't miss that box. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Is that total with interest after you've calculated?
No, that is just your purchase price total.
That's it.
Yeah, purchase price total. And I think on your system, it auto calculates that, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so that should never be missed.
Yeah.
But yeah, just want to make sure that that's an important piece. Okay, so contingencies. I do look a little bit in here for any additional terms. So finance terms, I've had people put in there, it's private money, it's hard money. One thing people always want to say, hard money, it's cash. Private money, it's cash. We still have to record a deed of trust. There's still fees that come with that private money. Like, no money's free, right? There are fees, there is financing, there is processing. If it's hard money, private money, we still have to go through loan docs, signings, recordings, all those things. So there are still costs. So it's good to know as escrow if it is private money or hard money to put that in there, because a lot of people will just put that it's cash. And then I find out, oh, there's a lender, there's financing. Oh, no, it's private money, so it's not the same thing. It's different type of financing, but it's still financing. They're still borrowing money, and we still have to record a deed of trust. Unless the bank is willing to literally just hand them cash without any kind of stipulation or lien in place or anything like that, which is not normal, but I guess you could get lucky, right? Okay, contingencies. So a lot of this really isn't highlighted because escrow does not maintain contingency removal, contingency time period. I have my own contingencies that are in this contract that I have to adhere to, like the EMD, the 3 days. My docs have to be returned within 5 days of receipt. There are contingencies in here that are geared towards escrow, but these right here are mainly for you guys. Other than, the title report comes from me to the clients, obviously, and the HOA docs. But appraisal contingency, loan contingency, for those two items, I know that if you guys are removing those contingencies right away, I do include in my escrow instructions that there is financing, but it's not subject to. But I'm not here to make sure that the buyers remove any contingencies. That's all. I'm making sure you guys see your contingency forms, contingency removal forms. The dates are all, something that you guys or your transaction coordinator will calculate, hopefully. But yeah, investigation of property, title report is something that I'll provide. HOA docs is something we do order through escrow. We provide. When it comes to HOA docs and that contingency period, good thing to keep in mind the turnaround time for HOA docs, because I know I've mentioned in the office meetings before that it takes time for HOA docs to come in. Standard time is anywhere from 5 to 10 business days, and you have a 17-day contingency period, right? So, if you talk to your seller and let them know, like, hey, this is a 21-day escrow or 20-day escrow or 15-day escrow, we need to get these HOA docs ordered on a rush versus a standard turnaround time to make sure that they're in, the buyer has time to review it, and you can get that contingency removed as soon as possible. So keep that in mind when you do have HOAs. I'm happy to help look up whatever HOA company is with that property and find out what's the turnaround time, what's the upfront fee, because most of them, 99% of them have an upfront fee. And they're usually anywhere from $4 to $6. I've seen it high as $800 to order the docs. And most of them take credit cards, but some take money orders, you know, so there's another day or two to get a money order, get it to the HOA, and they don't start processing your order until they receive payment.
The seller pays for that, right?
Yes, yeah. But I mean, if you're reviewing this contract with your seller and you're looking at your contingencies, it's good to know, like, okay, I have the seller, they have 17 days. How long does it take to get docs? When don't you know what I mean? How do I make sure they get docs in time to review so they can remove that contingency, you know, in time? So something to remember on the seller side as well, to know how much, you know, I do have a lot of agents that ask me, have a new listing. I need to know what's the turnaround time. So it's a 30-day escrow. Will I have time? When's the ETA to get the docs? Then it'll get to the buyer. Okay, then I know when to expect contingency removal from that buyer. So whether it's the buyer or seller, something good to know. I mean, the buyer obviously probably wants as much time as they can to review the docs, but good to know as a seller to make sure that it's not on you or your seller for delaying the buyer getting those documents. Sale of buyer's property. So anytime I see these, you know, little boxes that have something attached to it, I can tell you right now, I never get those forms, it seems. I think when you are inputting something in your system, so like if you mark that box, I want to say that form auto generates in your system, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure that when you go through all your documents and you're setting everything up, that any disclosures, contingency forms, anything that's supposed to be attached is attached. Because those things are typically, I see missing when you're ready to open escrow, I see these things missing. So that's the only reason why I bring them up. If you're marking something, attaching addendums, attaching disclosures, make sure that escrow and the other agents and the clients are all getting all those attached documents as well. Possession. So in my escrow instructions, you know, we don't handle possession like you guys hand keys over. You know, that's not something that escrow does. But it is part of the contract. I do put it in my escrow instructions as a memorandum item. Like, this is just to note that it's part of the purchase agreement, but escrow holder is not responsible or liable for the actual ultimate transfer of possession. So I do put in here that it's upon notice of recordation. That's something that's new, that's changed. It used to be at closing at 6 o'clock or 3 days after. I mean, and if those dates are in there, then just make sure that I know as well. And that all that's marked and completed. The SIP form is another form that I seem to get missed when people open escrow. So if the seller's going to occupy the property after closing, seller's getting a license, you know, to remain in possession after close of escrow between 29 days or less, that form should be attached. So just make sure if you do that, that we get that form as well. So then I know if there's any cost for rents, do I have to hold a delivery possession fee? Like, all that detail is on that form. So I'll need that in order to type my escrow instructions too. Make sure I charge appropriately. So here's my contingencies for time of performance. Sign and return escrow folder provisions and instructions 5 days after receipt. So after the buyer and seller have received my documents, they're required to return it within 5 days. So that's something I follow up with them, something that I do. But I mean, sometimes these clients might need to reach out to the realtors to help push. So something to keep in mind for you that, okay, escrow documents went out. I need to make sure, you know, that they get in. If you don't hear from me, like, there's a problem, right? Or if you hear from me, there's probably a problem. But yes, time for ordering documents. So 3 days after acceptance. So actually you only have 3 days to pay that fee. So make sure for HOA documents that I was talking about, the standard time in here is 3 days after acceptance. So it's good to in advance probably know the cost, the turnaround time, and who we need to order from when we're dealing with HOAs. Evidence of, 3 days after acceptance. Okay, next page. Allocation of costs. So this is everything I'm looking for when it comes to fees. You know, we're responsible for all the charges through escrow, right? Anything that's getting paid through escrow should go through here, or in addendums, or, you know, changes, counters, things like that. So everything on here is what I'm looking for. Natural hazard disclosure report, who's paying? If you guys are marking both, then it's 50-50. Each person is paying this one fee. It's going to be split. Environmental, if you want that, make sure you add it. Reports here. Here's a good place to put termite report. If you want termite report only, and then you can mark who's going to pay for that. You know, the smoke alarms, the carbon monoxide detectors, the water heater bracing, that's nothing that I can follow up on, but I'm going to follow up with you guys if there's an invoice for it. You know, if there's something that you've done with regards to smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, water heater bracing, and there's like a plumbing invoice, make sure that escrow gets it. There is a part of this contract where if there are invoices, it says in here, they're to be delivered to the escrow holder with sufficient enough time to close the escrow. So another thing is, if we're adding charges, if anything's charged to the buyer and we have loan docs, forget about it. You can't add anything. The lender will not allow it. You can add credits, you know, the lender's willing to take money off, but if there's a lender and we need to add an invoice for plumbing and it's like day before closing, they're probably not going to let us add it at that point. So then you'll have to figure it outside of escrow or between the parties. There's nothing I'll be able to do. So good to keep track of invoices and make sure that escrow gets anything that needs to be billed through the file right away, or at least let me know there's going to be a bill coming. I have staging invoices. I'm going to have it so I know to note my file. I can't close without this invoice, you know, things like that. Government required point of sale inspection reports. So for me, that's the city reports. If there are any city reports for where your property is located at, who's going to pay for that? And half the time, sometimes this isn't marked at all because realtors don't even know that there's a city report required. We have lists. I know I have lists. The title companies have lists. If you have a new listing or you're going to a listing appointment and you don't know and want to know if that city has any kind of resale requirement, reach out to me, reach out to title. We have those lists. We're happy to give them to you. So Long Beach has a required city report. You know, Los Angeles, San Pedro, Newport Beach. There's, yeah, the parking impacted zone.
Oh, impact, yeah.
Yeah.
That I know, yeah.
A lot of the suburbs of Los Angeles area, like San Pedro, is city of San Pedro, but it's considered. So that all requires the 9A, the water power certificate for the city of Los Angeles. You know, there's a lot of cities out there that have requirements, and everything has kind of changed a lot with COVID. Prices have gone up. They've changed the way that you order and things like that. Like I have a report I just ordered, they're 2 weeks behind, the city is. It usually is 5 to 10 days, and now they just emailed me that it's going to be an extra 2 weeks.
So do people often split that with buyer seller? If I have the listing, my seller is always paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically a seller fee, but I mean, it's up to you guys what you want to negotiate, right? Or what your clients are willing to pay. Or if you know what the cost is and you discuss it with your client, it's like, oh, it's $70. We're just going to ask the seller to pay for it. Or it's $70. We can just pay for it. You know, I have a lot of times where people are flipping the house, right? They're like, oh, we don't really want the report. We're just going to demolish everything, right? It's still required, though. The city still requires it. We have to do it. It's part of their civil section code. The municipal code. It's part of it. It's required. There are penalties, fines. There's like, I think it's Gardena, or there's a city over there in LA area. They have a misdemeanor if you don't do it. Yeah, no. So it's important to get these reports done. You don't want anyone to come back with penalties, fines, violations from the city.
Carson doesn't do it anymore.
No, Carson doesn't. I have a letter for the city of Carson for the Repeal Act if anyone needs it. So let me know. I have that
saved. Escrow on one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It used to be recorded on title, so we had to give that letter to all the title companies showing that it was repealed. Because they never went back and released the recordings from all. Yeah, I know. But good place to see, good thing to look at. Government required reports or correction remedial actions. I mean, I wouldn't know if there's anything like that unless you already know maybe the property has city violations or city repairs that are needed, or the house is falling apart. You know, that would be something to consider. Escrow fees, most people put, you know, each pay their own fee, or most people put both. So each pay their own, like I had mentioned.
So it means the same thing.
Kind of. Oh, sorry.
So each pay their own, can they negotiate with you to have a better rate?
Right. I mean, that's where people can ask us for credits. I mean, we don't typically give credits. Like our escrow fee is split and it's between the parties. And I mean, we're very comparable to everyone in the area. I make sure to check on fees with other escrow companies to make sure that I'm just as competitive as everybody else. So, but yes, each pay their own would mean that each pays their own fees. It doesn't have to be split 50-50. But if you are splitting it 50-50 and one side asks for a credit, then I have to give a credit to both sides, which is unfortunate. You know, for me, I don't have a choice. You know, I have to eat both sides of the fee. So, but yes, that's what that's for. Escrow holder, that's where you'll put your company. Hopefully it's us. But it doesn't hurt to ask. But yeah, that's another place to put your services. Same with the owner's title policy, you know, seller or whoever wants to choose a preference there, which title company you want to use. And same thing with owner's policy, seller or buyer or each. Most sellers pay the owner's policy. You know, it really protects both sides. You know, the point of the owner's policy is that helps the buyer, the seller meet the obligation of providing the buyer free and clear title. Like, I'm going to provide free and clear title. I'm going to make sure liens are paid off, title, you know, taxes are paid. There's nothing else holding over cloud on this title of the property. And here's insurance to show that you're getting free and clear title. That's why the seller typically pays it. But it can be split, just depends. I've had a few files lately where people are splitting the owner's policy. Buyer's lender policy, obviously, that's a lender requirement, so that's why it's already written in, right? I already know that if there's a lender, the buyer pays whatever premium based on that buyer's loan amount. County taxes, again, it's typically a seller fee for paying county taxes, but I've had a few files lately where buyers are willing to split. You know, I think they're trying to make the offer look a little more nicer. We're willing to, you know, compensate a little bit here, where they'll split county transfer tax or split county city transfer tax. A lot of times I see agents don't realize there are some cities that have city transfer tax and they're not marking this box. So then I have to go back and say, okay, who's going to pay the $5,000 city transfer tax? Like LA, it's thousands of dollars. For every $1,000 of your purchase price, it's $4.50. So it's thousands of dollars for city transfer tax. Same with Riverside. They have city transfer. It's not $4.50, it's $1.10, just same as county. But Riverside has city transfer tax too. So people just don't realize, and then when I open escrow, it's like, I need to find out who do I pay, right?
Always, on the old one, I would always check it and then in the line next to it, if applicable.
If applicable,
That way
and
I
that
don't have to
works
think
too.
about it.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works too. At least I know then, okay, if it applies, I'm gonna charge this person, or I'm gonna charge that person, you know, otherwise then I need an addendum. Yeah,
I have a question.
yes.
So how much is the escrow fees?
It's $2 per thousand and then a $600 base. And then we estimate just if there are any wire or messenger fees, just depends on where if we have to overnight docs, if we have to, you know, send something here or there, then there's overnight estimates or wire fees. Our bank charges us wire fees, so that's why we have wire fee.
This is $2 per each
Thousand.
thousand,
Mm-hmm.
in
And it's
addition to the 600.
600 base. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, you're so welcome.
Is that the standard?
Yeah, it's usually $2 per thousand. You know, back in the day, a lot of escrow companies broke down their base fee and charged like, you know, document prep fee, HOA prep fee, order demand fee, prepping the grantee fee. Like it was a bunch of fees. But when TRID came into play, like when TRID became the new like RESPA rules, I don't know if that used to be HUDs, right? We had HUDs, HUD
Yeah.
1, like short sales and bank foreclosures, HUDs, right? So they went away with the HUDs and now it's TRID and now it's closing disclosures and loan estimates. When all that happened, the disclosure of like no tolerance or the 10% tolerance with a lot of these banks just made us, it affected us so much that we were just like, we're going to put it all in one base fee instead of having all these miscellaneous fees. So no more miscellaneous fees. It's an escrow fee and a base fee. That's it. The only miscellaneous fees are small and they're only required if needed, messenger, wire, you know, things like that.
So it's basically 3,200 for, I don't know, actually.
I mean, I don't have my calculator on. Is it-
2,600.
you testing me?
2,600 for $1 million.
Yes, could be. Yeah, sounds about right. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So, okay, where we're city transfer tax, HOA fees. So seller is required to pay for those HOA fees. Usually it's paid by credit card. There are some HOAs that want checks or want money orders. So it just depends. Another good thing to find out in advance so we know what we're dealing with. HOA certification fee, that's something that the buyer has to pay. That's usually only required by lenders. So, I mean, buyers don't really ask for that or want it unless, you know, they know what it is, but lenders will require it. And right now with the new Fannie and Freddie Mae guidelines that came out about HOAs, something good to know if you're working with a buyer and you're looking at condos, that you talk to your lender and find out, okay, are the Fannie Freddie new guidelines going to apply to this? Just because there's a new questionnaire basically that the lenders have to get, the HOAs aren't familiar yet with, because it all literally just came into effect February 1st. So if you have someone with an HOA that's getting like a Fannie Freddie, loan or through them, maybe just double check with them on what condo questionnaire they may need. Like I had one file that was trying to close right in the middle of February, and they had to change their whole loan, the down payment, everything, because the HOA no longer met their guidelines. It's the reserved funds of the HOA. Basically all stems from the building that collapsed in Florida.
Yeah.
So now there's new questions they need to know about the structure and the reserves before they can approve the loan. So something to know, something to keep in mind. Private transfer fees, we don't typically have them. Where you see a lot of private transfer fees would be on like new construction. Like a big builder that does private transfer fees is Lennar Homes. They actually charge a percentage of the purchase price. So something just to keep in mind, but we don't typically see them, but just know if there are any private transfer fees, sellers aware they automatically have to pay them unless this is checked. So other fees or costs, you can put termite fees here or other terms here. Like I know we had termite report, any other reports up there, but if you want section 1 termite work, here's a good place where you can put section 1, section 2, termite, seller to pay, buyer to pay. If you want that part of the purchase agreement, or if you want to ask for it in your contract. The home warranty plan. Honestly, every single contract, I feel this happens. Someone will mark who's to pay and no dollar amount. So I'm like, oh, okay. So this, the buyer can get as much as they want in home warranty. I didn't know the seller didn't care. Like, no limit. You get as much as you want. And then an agent will be like, oh, I totally missed that, but it's okay. The agent will be okay with us ordering whatever we want. It's like, wait, did you check with them? So if you're doing the home warranty, make sure to mark the box and make sure to put the dollar amount in there, because I'll need both the dollar amount and the box. Or I've seen it vice versa, where people put $500 and no one to charge. And I say, oh, the listing agent will be fine. The seller's going to pay it. I've literally had agents tell me that. Like, okay, well, let me check with them to make sure that they know. But yeah, so just double check your boxes, double check the dollar amounts, make sure that all of that's in there. Because again, these are all things that I'm seeing. Oh, you know what? Actually, one more thing on this page. The top, sorry. All the items included. So I, again, escrow, I don't handle any of these items, right? But if you mark any of these items, I'll put it again in memorandum, things that are included in the sale. I had one seller, like I had a bunch of things marked and she was like, oh no, I'm not leaving the stove. I'm not leaving the microwave. Who said I was gonna do that? Like, it's in a purchase agreement. So, oh, no. I had one where the property had no stove and they marked it. And I was like, okay, so I called the realtor. I'm like, does this mean you have to put a stove in? Because there's no stove and you included it with the price, with the doc, you know what I mean? So check these boxes. It's important to see what's included, what's not included, and what's in the house. Because the agents were like, oh my God, you're right. Do I have to now add a stove to the house because it's marked in the contract? So
The bathroom mirror thing.
I know.
Why did they, because I got one of these, I'm like, why would you check
I
that?
know. And I actually did have one seller say they didn't want to let their bathroom mirrors go. They were custom ordered. And so, just check, make sure that the sellers know what's being included in the purchase or in the offer, because I have a lot of sellers that I'm signing with them and they're like, oh, I had no idea, or the house doesn't have that.
So it
or
comes
I'm
with the
keeping
check in it on it, right?
It does, yes.
So we have
Unless
to wipe that out.
excluded, yeah, unless excluded below. So then you would have to put in the exclusion where it
Got
says excluded items,
Okay.
mark a box and put mirrors. And when I took
That's so crazy.
I know. When I took the real estate class, they said it's because most houses all have bathroom mirrors. That was their reason for it. I was like, okay, I don't know.
But how many,
I
people
know.
take the mirrors
I
out?
know. But yes, make sure that whatever they're asking for is something that they can get in the escrow. Because I have sellers that didn't have a stove or didn't have a refrigerator, or, and you don't want to be stuck having to add a refrigerator or stove if the seller agreed to include it in the home. So, sorry, just wanted to make sure I brought that up because that also is something I have seen.
What about furniture? If the seller is leaving furniture behind, is that put in at the bottom? where it says other remarks for other terms?
I would say if there's any personal property being included, there are blank lines to use, and I would use those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, any of those blank lines that are right there, if there's any personal property that's not already listed there, then I would add it in there. And I've had things like that added. I've had cat shells added, TVs, yeah, built-in closets, like all kinds of stuff. So if there's any other personal property that they want to keep, I would put it in those blank lines. And then just make sure if you have the seller, you double check that, because like I said, it's come up. So just want to make sure everyone's aware. Okay, property addendums. Again, so anything that's marked in here, any other addendums you're adding to your purchase contract, make sure that we get them. Again, like I've seen people mark the tenant occupied or tenants in the property and nobody gives me the forms. I'm like, do I need to do rents? Are we transferring security deposits? Like all of these are things I need to do to open escrow, to get escrow instructions going. So if you're marking any of these or attaching any of these, make sure that they're included with the contract. Or if you're representing the seller and you get this offer, make sure that you go through it and say, oh, they've attached all these disclosures. I need to look at them too, right? You don't want to sign the offer, open escrow, and then there's addendums attached that you never saw, never looked at, never signed, and they might have other terms that you weren't aware of, right? So anything that's attached, make sure that we get those too. Terms affecting price. Oh yeah, so just a breakdown, obviously, of the initial deposit. When we open escrow, I confirm the acceptance date with the realtors. Well, I'll get to that page about the acceptance date, but like, it used to be the last date of signature is the acceptance date. That's no longer the case. If you read the clause of the contract, I've talked to the brokers, I've talked to CR, it is the date that the final person has received the fully executed offer. So it's that date, it's a date of delivery. It is not the last date signed. So keep that in mind. So then I know what the acceptance date is.
So they have the RPA and say like there's counters. It's the last day of when.
So like, let's say your counteroffer is fully executed. And let's say
Okay.
the counteroffer, it's a seller counteroffer, right? So I think the seller is the last person to sign. Is it the seller or the buyer? Or no, the buyer accepts it. Let's say the buyer accepts the counteroffer. So then it's the buyer, the buyer's agent's responsibility. Now everything's fully accepted. They need to send that to the seller. The date that they send it is the date of acceptance. The date it's delivered to that party. Date of acceptance.
Okay.
So hopefully it's usually the same day, right? You're gonna sign it and send it. So hopefully it is the same day. But if you get it signed at 5 o'clock at night and you don't send it to the next day, then that's the date of acceptance. So, and now I have to, as an escrow holder, I have to actually input who has advised me of the acceptance date in the contract. So when I open escrow, it's one of my first questions. Agents, confirm the acceptance date. Or when you open escrow, you can tell me right then and there, here's my acceptance date. I delivered the contract, it's fully executed, this is the date. And then I can just confirm with the other agent. But it's one of my first questions I'm going to ask you, because we get everything from that date, right? Your contingency dates, the close of escrow date. It's an important acceptance date to know. So when you open.
So you could take that verbally, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to say proof from the email chain or anything.
No, I take it from the agents, and then in the contract, it says the following have advised me, and I actually put in their agents. So as long as I have confirmation, you guys have told me, I have an email, I have it in writing, this is the acceptance date, then that's what I'm good with. Yeah. Sorry, but yeah, so once I get the acceptance date, then I know my date when I have to get the EMD in. Okay, here's my date of acceptance. I need to get the EMD in right away. If you're the buyer's agent, it's good to keep an eye out for who escrow is, so you can give escrow your buyer's contact information right away, so then I can start requesting that EMD, because it's got to come over secured. We have to verify instructions. They have to get to the bank. So when you open escrow, it's good to reach out to escrow as soon as you know who it is. Like, here's my buyer's name, their phone number, their email address. Send docs direct to them, or send docs to me, however you want us to send our escrow docs. But at least I can get going. I'm like, okay, buyer, introduction. I'm your escrow officer. I'm going to send you a separate email with wire instructions. It's going to be secured, and then we can just continue to follow up with them. Yeah. So then we're not delayed on that EMD. Retention deposit, I'll cash offer. Oh, that was a new one that I thought was different. Like, I'm not even gonna go through that. That's not really something that that's more for me, not for you. Balance of first month. Contractual credit. Well, limits on credits to buyer. Okay, the reason they have this clause on limits to credits is because if there's a lender, most lenders will not allow you to credit more than what the closing costs are. So like, I've had people come across with like $20,000 credit for the roof, but there's not $20,000 cost of credit. Like the lenders don't want to see credits for repairs or for, property or things like that. The credits that can only be done lender approved are for closing costs. So if you're doing credits for repairs or roofs or, other things, make sure that there's enough costs for the buyer to cover those credits. Otherwise, the lender is going to make me lower it. They won't allow me to do that credit through escrow. So limits on credits, it's just to make sure that if you're using high amount of credits, like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in credits, that there's enough closing costs for the buyer to get those credits covered. Does that make sense?
How do we know that?
You can reach out to escrow, you can reach out to the lender and find out what the lender costs are. So like, you can obviously anticipate a couple thousand for escrow fees, right?
Because I have $6,500 right now in credit.
And see, that still should be fine. Because you have a couple $1,000s in escrow fees, you're gonna have probably at least another couple thousand in title fees. If there's property taxes, that's another thing. If the buyer obviously is gonna be paying interest, they're gonna be, if they get an impound account, impound accounts could be thousands.
Yeah.
For taxes, for insurance. I have a lot of buyers buying down their rate right now. That's a couple $1,000s too. So it should be fine, but like.
So it's always been that way, right?
Yeah, for
We
the
just
most
didn't
part.
really know.
Yeah, it's literally when you get like 10, 20, like when you get like way up there in credits, you need to make sure that there's enough closing costs to cover it.
Okay.
5,000, 7,000, when you get to 10,000, maybe double check,
Yeah.
just to make sure that there's enough credits in there.
Can I just say something on my end?
Yeah.
That when I get a amendment saying that there's, $10,000 in closing costs, the broker's not gonna sign that because they know that it's gonna be a repair and they're gonna want a hold harmless. Unless it is actually for closing costs. I mean, if you've done business with this client several times and you want to give them, a $2,500 credit or something like that, that's fine. But if it is for repairs, they're gonna ask for a hold harmless.
And it could be other one, like, I have agents that are literally strict, like, I'm just helping my client cover their costs and I want to give them a credit for my commission. But yeah, if you're giving them a credit to cover repairs that maybe the seller wasn't going to cover, and you're doing that, that's exactly what.
So don't wait until the 11th hour to tell everybody about that credit, because then you're rushing around trying to get that hold harmless.
What is that, whole
That happened
harmless
today.
Oh, really? Perfect timing. You were meant to be here.
So releasing,
Meant to be here.
if you're giving a credit for repairs, there's no guarantee that they're gonna use that money for the repairs. So they're not gonna hold you harmless if it was supposed to be for an electrical repair. Oh, but the house catches on fire because they chose not to use those funds for the electricity. So it protects you on your air conditions insurance.
So we're crediting the buyers for stuff they wanted us to do, which we're not going to do.
You're still gonna have to.
Okay, yeah, all right.
hold harmless agreement?
Yes, and the broker will draw that up from our risk management.
Yeah, go to KW for that one.
Yeah. But don't wait till.
Don't ask
Yes,
Sarah.
don't wait to the last minute, definitely. Okay, so leased or liened items. This one is kind of in a different color because it depends on what it is, like if there's something liened or leased that's recorded on title, that's something escrow needs to have removed or transferred. So for example, solar. If the property has a solar system, that's something we need to know, especially right when we open escrow. A lot of these solar companies will take 14 days to process transfers and they have their own system. Like they won't even send me any of the documents or the transfer forms. Like I have to follow up with them. Did you send it to the seller? Did you send it to the buyer? There's $150 processing fee. Seller has to pay with a credit card through their PayPal account. Like it's a whole process when there's solar on the property. And each solar company is different. So if there is solar, something to let us know then to be aware. Send us whatever solar contact information you have. If you have the lease agreement from your sellers, or, any other liens that may be on the property for personal property or things like that. So something good to know, something good to have when you're opening escrow that I know and I'm aware. So again, we meet our timeframes. It doesn't hold us up or delay from close of escrow. Allocation of costs, like I said, everything I'm going to look for in fees is going to be in there. Prior to close of escrow, that's what I was mentioning. Any like city reports, city requirements has to be done prior to close of escrow, written in compliance and in accordance of law, unless sellers exempt, which I don't have a single city that has like a waiver. So if there's a city report, it's required. Whether they're going to demolish that house and rebuild it from the ground up, we still have to follow the city laws, the city requirements. I get that asked a lot, so I'm repeating it. Sorry, just to make sure. Point of sale requirements, again, that's what we were just discussing, any kind of required property reports, things like that. Re-inspection fees, if there are any re-inspection fees for anything, it's usually like the appraisal. They go out, they do, it's called the 1004D, when they order a re-inspection because the appraiser went out and there's no carbon monoxide detectors, or there's no, the water heater's not strapped, or if there's something that the appraiser calls out and they have to go back to physically re-inspect it, it's like $150 for that appraiser to go back out. And we always have charged the buyer. But it's the seller's responsibility, right? To have smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, the water heater, unless the buyers agreed to pay for those things. But if those things aren't in when the appraiser goes out, then this is now saying the seller's responsible for that re-inspection fee. So keep that in mind. If there's any re-inspection fees, if the appraisal goes back out, seller shall be responsible for those costs. It could be, like I said, $100, $150. So before the appraiser goes out, make sure you're in line. Otherwise, it could be extra costs. Home warranty, again, we went over that home warranty box. Escrow, we don't typically order the home warranty. A lot of people want escrow to order it, but I have never seen the house. I don't know how big it is. I don't know what's working, what's not working, what's included, not included. So really, you should make sure that especially if you have the buyer and you want to make sure the buyer has full coverage for whatever you think is going to matter to them, you want to make sure that the coverage that you want for your client is there, and that you're ordering something that's in there and working versus me who's just like, oh, I'm just going to pick whatever. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, it's important for the realtors to choose the home warranty. For me, I've never seen the house. I'm never going to see it. I don't know. So I'm going and ordering something blind that maybe isn't what people want. So home warranty, or have your TC order it too. I mean, I know a lot of TCs order it too. As long as you tell them exactly what you want ordered. Waiver of a home warranty, that's again the other, if you want to waive it, or just don't complete it or mark it. Statutory disclosures, that's all you guys. Lead-based paint disclosures. I mean, sometimes these disclosures do come in, especially like, the lead-based paint. Sometimes lenders will, like FHA, lenders will want that lead-based paint disclosure. If you know that the buyer's getting an FHA loan, we're going to need that disclosure for the lender. Withholding taxes. Everyone hates withholding. Stay withholding. Okay. Most sellers are exempt from franchise tax board withholding because it's been their primary residence for the most part 2 of the last 5 years. So that's usually what most sellers can mark. It's never been their primary. If it's been vacant, but can never be used as a vacation rental or a tenant rental, anything like that, you wouldn't apply, you wouldn't be exempt. Withholding taxes is something to bring up to your clients, your sellers. This is applying to the sellers. If they are going to be exempt or not. We do net sheets for all the realtors. If you want net sheets and or you've been talking with the seller like, oh, I've never lived in it, it's been a rental for 20 years, I just own it myself as a single woman, they're probably going to be subject to withholding. So something to know, because that's in the thousands. That's based on the purchase price. The standard withholding is 3.3 1/3% of the purchase price. So it's a lot, right? That's like your commission, 3%. So, I mean, something to keep in mind when you're talking with the sellers so that they don't expect, like, oh, I'm going to be short 20 grand because I have to pay withholding tax. Withholding tax is like a prepayment to the state. It's for the franchise tax board, state income taxes. You could be exempt. It's possible, not owing anything, but if you're not exempt in the escrow based on that disclosure, then we have to pay it. And then when you, let's say you are exempt and you didn't owe anything to the state of California, when you go to file taxes next year, your CPA will claim a refund for whatever was withheld. Or a balance, like let's say you only owed half of it, then whatever's refunds owed will come back to you. Your CPA will take care of all of that. So that's, you know, depending on what we get on the 593 form. So something to just keep in mind, something that they should know when it comes to that. Oh, and then the FERPTA laws. So if I know the CAR QS form just got revised, so I'll send out like our FERPTA, but I mean, I'm whiting out the seller's social, I'm whiting out the seller's information. I'm happy to sign that QS form now that we're, you know, DVO, we're independent. Like I can sign that disclosure if you need it. You just let me know. I'm happy to sign it once I get the seller's FERPTA to show that we are in receipt of the seller's non-foreign tax affidavit and status. You know, if the seller is foreign, keep in mind that has increased. It's like 15% of the purchase price if they're a foreign seller. You know, keep that in mind. Food for thought. Yeah, condominiums, we went over that again. HOAs, like I said, because we have to order them, it takes time. We have to get credit cards, payments, things like that. It's 8 to 10 days typically. That's a standard turnaround time to get those disclosures. Hazard reports, title investing. So within 7 days after request, I'm required to, you know, provide information to clear title. So that's my job. I'm here to help clear title. Whatever's on the prelim report, I'm going to order payoffs. I'm going to order liens. I'm going to order judgments. Whatever comes up, that's something that we're here to clear. So really, this is kind of for me, but something good to know too, since that's something that the buyer is getting, free clear title. Title insurance paid by seller. You know, that's what the owner's policy is all for. So really, this is for me.
Have you had any lenders that require payment for demand?
Payment for a demand?
Yes.
Like what kind of demand?
You send them a demand for final payment to pay them off.
Oh, yeah.
Have they ever charged you
Yes.
$10?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, 100%. Like I will do the seller's estimate and there's a reconveyance fee. There's a demand fee. There's a fax fee. There's a quote fee. Like there are so many fees that come from the banks and the sellers will ask me, what are all these fees for? Like it's your bank. Like you have to call the bank and see if you can have it waived or see if you can get it removed. And sometimes if like the escrow prolongs and we have to order an updated demand, they add another fee to it to order it again. Or they made a payment, I have to order a new demand that shows they made a payment. They could add it. It depends on the bank. It really does. Like some banks don't have fees like that. Like Wells Fargo is one of them. You know, it just depends. But most of them, yes, if they can charge it, they will. Yeah, unfortunately. This one that's highlighted in dark orange, this is something new. I think title companies are probably sharing more about it. It has to do with like getting the reports and making sure like CC&Rs and things that are reported on the property are not, you know, there's nothing in there that regards to age or race or ethnicity, like nothing like that. That's kind of a new law. What escrow is doing, or what I've talked to my team about making sure we're doing, and maybe just make sure when you get your title reports that they're all hyperlinked, so that anything that's recorded on the property, the buyer can click on it and review it. They're basically getting all the documents plus the report for them to view. You know, if they want to look at the easements, they can look at the easements. If they want to get it plotted, if you want to get easements plotted, that's something you do have to ask for. I do have some realtors that ask for plotted easements on a map. So to show this is this easement, this is this easement, these are all the rights of access basically. And you can get those. Some title companies charge for them though. It's like $100 if that's something that you want. So just another thing to keep in mind. But I would just make sure when you're getting title reports, they're hyperlinked. When your buyer's getting them, like I CC all the agents when I send docs, that I make sure that those prelims are hyperlinked so they can click on all those documents, all the underlying docs as well. Time periods, contingency removals, again, that's all for you guys. I won't get into that. Cancellation on deposits. So I require mutually agreed upon cancellation instructions in order to cancel escrow. Same with dispersing funds. I can't just, oh, the seller wants to keep it, they get, no. So everyone has to be in agreement on the funds being dispersed and cancellation. Unless I get some kind of judicial award, arbitration award, something from the court that's given me instructions legally to do, like to disperse and cancel. but something to keep in mind. And I actually include all that in my escrow instructions as well. Prorations. So we always make sure taxes are paid current. So that's why that's in all capital letters. Taxes are always paid current at close of escrow. So everything is all paid, due, anything that's due is open is paid. Same with HOAs, special liens, things like that. We will prorate property taxes, we will prorate HOA dues, we will prorate rents, things that will be, you know, based on the monthly, like 30-day proration. That's what all that's for. So, except obviously taxes are not on a 30-day. Taxes are based on close of escrow and the end of the tax period. And I know the taxes are so confusing. Like right now we're in second half tax period. This tax period ends 7/1. So right now, if you're in escrow, your buyers will be charged from close of escrow to 7/1. Because the seller's paying the full bill. It's going to be due delinquent April 10th.
Yeah.
So sellers responsible for paying the full bill if they haven't paid it already. Sometimes, or if they're impounded, their lenders might have already paid it. So then the buyer is going to get a charge of proration at this time. Yeah.
That's basically going to the seller, reimbursing the seller for the taxes.
Or the taxes, yes. When we begin 7/1, it flips. The seller actually gets a charge because the bill's not out yet. I can't pay anything. So the buyer's going to pay the full bill when they get it in October. So the buyer needs a credit to pay that bill. So
So
it
what are
flips.
you telling people to not pay their taxes that would be due April 10th?
If we are opening escrow, you know, right now, within 30 days of closing, they can still pay it. But if we're getting like a couple weeks in, it will take probably a month for them to process. But if we're getting a couple weeks, I just tell people don't pay it. But again, I don't want people to incur a penalty that they don't want to pay. So if they want to pay it and avoid the penalty, that's fine. But then they need to understand, and I explained it to them, that if you pay it and it's not posted, I have to hold the tax amount plus the penalty until it post paid. So
Can it be paid through you?
yeah, it can be paid through us, absolutely. But again, if we like go past it April 10th, then I have to pay the penalty. But if they want to avoid paying the penalty, they can pay it when they want, but I have to hold the penalty still. So they like, it's almost like they're paying it twice until I can give them a refund, unfortunately. It's our way of making sure it gets paid. Yeah. But a lot of lenders are, you know, collecting impounds too. So I'm double checking to make sure the lender's not collecting in anticipation to pay the next bill. And then I'm paying the bill, so it's getting paid double. So something else we look for, but yeah. Oh yeah, we don't handle utility bills. That's all in capital letters. I've never been asked that, so I don't know why it's in all capital letters, but yeah, we don't handle utility bills. Escrow doesn't anyway. Sorry. Okay.
Unless you have to transfer some deposits or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do see utility liens on title. In that case, I do have to pay utility bills. But anything that's like electric or gas that's not on title, then I'm not, or not delinquent and recorded a lien, then I'm not paying for that. No. Joint escrow instructions, again, joint escrow instructions. So a lot of my, you know, clauses this is like to the escrow holder. This is everything for me to help generate my escrow instructions. You know, the QS is what I wrote there because that has to do with the FERPTA laws. Agents, you're, you know, not a party to the transaction, things like that. Oh, this one is my favorite, G. So a copy of any amendment that affects any paragraph of this agreement for which escrow holder is responsible shall be delivered to escrow holder within 3 days. I bet none of you knew that was there, right? Because nobody follows this. If there is any change in terms of this agreement that affects me, the escrow holder, you are to draw an addendum, an amendment, and deliver it to me within 3 days of execution.
All I have to say is.
The only
thank
problem
goodness
is
for
it doesn't say
TCs.
who's responsible for it.
Well, you should know if it has to do with credits, if I have to change the closing date, if I have to, you know, if it's something that escrow is responsible for, then you need to give me, if it's an instruction to me, then I need it within 3 days of fully execution. So I'm sure you all know at the end of escrow, oh, I forgot to give you a request for repairs credit. Oh, I forgot to tell you there's, you know, if there's any change in terms, we're adding a buyer, we're removing a buyer, we're changing the price, we're adding a credit. Within, like, you should be drawing an amendment, an addendum. A lot of times realtors will be like, I'm just gonna email escrow. Can you draw an amendment for me? Sure, but your contract isn't gonna show that change. My escrow instructions do not supersede the purchase agreement. Like, your whatever amendments and counters, everything that you draw to the contract, I will draw the same to my escrow instructions, because we're gonna be matching, right? But if you don't draw an addendum, let's say you go to court and they're like, well, wait a minute, how can we only have an amendment on this, but the contract doesn't say, like, you know what I mean? It should always match. Any change in terms, and I repeat that.
I guess most of these go.
Yes, NCA. Any change in terms shall be delivered to the escrow holder within 3 days after mutual execution. And that's another thing. Sometimes I'll get draw an amendment. Here's the addendum. It's only signed by one person. Mutual execution agreement. We are not one-sided. It's got to be fully executed. Everyone has to be in agreement of the same change in terms. Just want to make sure that's all heard, because I get the emails all the time. I'm telling you, people will be like, oh, escrow, can you just draw an amendment? Oh, can you give me an addendum? Oh, sure, here, it's signed by my client. What about the other part? I need to make sure everyone's in mutual agreement. It's signed, it's accepted, it's sealed, and it's delivered. I like the Raisin song there, right? Signed, sealed, delivered. Yes. Okay, just want to make sure that's there. Assignments. So this is like a big thing, with investors, with people who are making offers and or assignees. They plan on assigning, the purchase to a different entity, company, anything like that. When you're doing this, I believe the new change here, I'm looking for the sentence, that the LLC or the entity must be in existence at the time that you're doing it.
Well, of course.
I think
Yeah.
you put a time limit on it too, right?
Right.
3 days or something.
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Yes, so it's a first sentence, buyer that is in existence at the time of such assignment. So you can't assign it to an entity that's not even been created yet. I've had people do that. Well, we're creating an LLC. We're creating it. We're going to assign it, but it's not even in existence yet. And that takes time too, to create an LLC. You need operating docs, you need articles. They have to be filed with the state of California. So it has to be in existence at the time of assignment. And then prior to any assignment, buyer shall disclose to seller the name of the assignee and amount of any monetary consideration between buyer and assignee. I mean, I've had this happen where I've had the buyer assign the purchase to a different entity, and that buyer got paid $10,000. And we didn't have to disclose it then because it was before this was done. So now, if that's the case, we have to tell the seller, oh, we're assigning it, and that buyer is getting 10 grand for assigning it. So it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, especially with people who are wholesaling.
Wholesalers, for sure.
Yes, that's just why I think they put that in there, because it's kind of been an up and coming thing.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing that.
But yeah. And I think that's about it that I want to cover there. Yes. But yeah, seller, I mean, also has to consent. Like, I have a whole page of amendment when it comes to an assignment, because you got to make sure like all the funds are transferred to that person now, that they've received the like I actually go back and have that assigned person, the entity, sign my prelim approval, sign my escrow instructions. I actually go back and I have them sign my escrow docs. I do. I mean, I even included in my amendment that person has read, received, approved the prelim, the escrow instructions, the counter, the purchase agreement, the disclosures, but not limited to. But I include all that verbiage, because I don't want anyone coming back to me and saying, I didn't get that doc, I didn't get that report, and I make them go back and sign my escrow docs.
So legally, you only have to give them what was incurred from when they took over the purchase.
Well, all the terms are part of the same agreement for me, so I have them sign everything. I want to make sure they've got the prelim, that they've read it, they've approved it. I mean, we're giving free and clear title to that buyer as even if they were just assigned. You know, they're still entitled to free and clear title insurance, right? Based on the contract.
But that's not the case if you had a buyer.
I do the same. I do. I have them sign everything, because I mean, I don't want anyone you don't want the liability, you know, you don't want anyone to come back and be like, I never got that prelim report. If I would have got it, then I would have known I wouldn't have gone through with the deal. You know, you just never know. think of everyone willing to sue. Everybody's willing to sue. You know, just think of it that way to make sure you're not putting yourself at any liability. You don't want someone to come back. I mean, what does it hurt to have them sign, right? It doesn't do anything other than protect you, and it helps them to make sure they're getting fully disclosed everything. Yeah. Okay, acceptance means the time the offer or final counter offer is fully executed in writing by the recipient party. So the person who received that offer, the counter offer, whatever, is fully executed and delivered to the offering party. So that's our acceptance date. It does not say the last day it's been signed. It says the date that it's been delivered to the offering party. So I received it, I've signed it, I'm delivering it back to the person who offered it, and now it's fully accepted, and that date is my acceptance date. So keep that in mind when it comes to opening escrow, what your date of acceptance is. Counting days, I'm sure you're all very aware with counting days from acceptance and on, so I won't go into any of that. Delivered, you know, everything electronically is considered delivered unless they tell you within so many days that they haven't received it, you know. Electronic copy. Oh yeah, recipient of the link to notify the sender in writing within 3 days after delivery of that link that they didn't receive it. Electronic copy, times of the essence. That's all for me. Okay, let's go to this page. Okay. So again, I mean, you guys know how to complete entities, make sure the buyer's signed, are they legally authorized? You know, this is all, it's all good when you have entities and trust, like they've basically made it easier and given you more room when you have trusts, entities, businesses, corporations that are buying. We have all this room to put in all that information. All of my acceptance clauses, that's what I'm looking for to make sure. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but you want to make sure that if you're completing this and you've done a counter offer, to mark the box that says seller did a counter offer, right? There's a counter offer subject to. I know it happens once in a while, not often, but want to make sure that's okay.
Where is that?
Page 15 of the contract,
Right.
the seller's acceptance, seller counter offer. Make sure you've marked that box if it's subject to a counter offer.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, and make sure we get that counter offer. I do have people open escrow and I'm missing counters. It happens. So just make sure like counter 1, counter 2, make sure they're all numbered right too. I've gotten where the counter numbers are off. You know, it takes like 2 more seconds just to make sure that you're numbering your docs right. I mean, it takes 2 more seconds just to make sure that you've got all your documents before you send off, you know, just double check. You know, I double check everything. I think it's good practice just to make sure. Okay, real estate broker section. Realtors. I can't tell you, I want to say probably 9 times out of 10, realtors will not put their email address, not put their phone number, not put their address of the office.
That's right.
I had a lender literally out, they conditioned it today that the buyer's agent didn't put the address of their office and I had to send it back. Like lenders requesting the address.
What is
So-
in there? Outside of that spot,
What?
the address is in there, isn't it? Outside of the spot right
But
here?
this is why would they put this here if they didn't want you to complete it? Tell me that.
Where is it, Richie?
Is that, huh?
Where is it if you don't provide it?
No. This is like the last page for notification. I can't see it from here, right? That's
This
the
is-
notification. So if you want to be notified by this address, this
This is
phone
where all of
number,
our info
this
goes.
email,
Right, this is where all of your broker information goes. Your firm, your name, your signature, your license number.
It's always been on the last page.
I know.
no.
Yes.
But haven't the address been other than the last page?
Last page is where all the info
Then maybe
goes.
I'm tripping.
You are.
You want a copy?
No.
Okay.
No, now he's
So-
irritated.
When you're writing your offer, when you're signing this with your sellers, fill in your license numbers. Make sure they're the right license numbers. I've had agents put in transposed numbers and I'm like, this isn't your license. Like, I look up all of your license numbers when I get the offer. Whether I know you or not, I look you all up to make sure you're all licensed. Cindy will know. I'll check with her when I'm like, wait a minute, this is about to expire, or this says license, but it's expired. I check everyone's license number to make sure that whoever's on this contract is a licensed agent. I mean, hopefully you're keeping up with so it doesn't lapse, but you never know. So
As you should when you're presenting an offer or receiving offers from other agents, make sure that
Oh,
your
yeah,
licensors.
Yes, I did have, yeah, I did
A
have.
few that have expired.
I have one on an outside escrow. The seller actually found me from a family member, actually. I'm looking for escrow. Can you do the escrow? Yeah, sure. I open it up and his agent wasn't licensed for like 6 months.
Oh.
I was like, you know your agent's not licensed, right? And he's like, what? I had no idea.
In that case, though, it just goes to the broker, right?
Oh, it
Everything
took
just
3
switches
weeks
to
for
the
me to
broker.
get this broker to perform. He wanted to call DRE, he wanted to call CAR. I don't think I'm supposed to do this. I'm like, well, we're at like this is a we need to figure out something. You need to go quicker. Like it literally took a while. It was an outside realtor, outside broker, but I mean, it's important to know. I'm helping you, Richard.
But he's not in charge.
I know. He wants to be like, I don't need to do that. Don't do that. That's not, it's somewhere else. Richard. Oh my goodness. Okay, so make sure to fill it in. Put your email address, put your phone number, because this also helps me too. Like if I need to send you a broker's commission instructions, I need your email address. I need to make sure I'm sending it to the designated email. Like this is important for me too. Phone numbers, like make sure I have the right phone, the best number to reach you. The addresses for your brokerage, it takes 2 seconds. You know the address, you can type it in. It takes 2 seconds. If you guys just make sure to fill all of your information in, because the lenders are looking at this and they are conditioning for it. So just make sure it's complete and make sure you sign it. A lot of escrows that open and the agents haven't signed this page. So make sure you sign it too. Escrow holder acknowledgement. So here's my part, right? What I have to do. So I'm putting in the escrow, the offer numbers, I'm putting in the deposit amount. Escrow holder is advised by agents, all parties. Like I need to put in there who's advised me. And it needs to be mutual. So I need both agents to agree, or both buyer and seller to agree to the acceptance date. So I can complete this page. Again, lenders are looking for this too. It's one of the first things when we open escrow that the lender wants me to provide is this page with all my escrow acknowledgement information. And I can't complete it until I know the acceptance date and everyone's in agreement. So something to think about when we open. But that's about it. How'd it go?
I'm just very happy I have a great PC.
Oh, yay! A good TC is important.
Oh my God.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I hope that was informational, Richard.
It was. Of course, I don't make mistakes.
All right, he's Mr. Perfect.
See, like, the great thing about the TCs is they see these more often than we do, too,
Yeah.
just like you do.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
I'm reading everything, and I mean, even if you think you've already done enough classes on the contract, if you don't feel like you know everything that's in here, like take it again. Because there's things that come up in escrow and you're like, I didn't know I agreed to that. Oh, it's page this, paragraph this, like section this. And you're like, I didn't know that was in there. I mean, this is like the one thing realtors should know, like the back of their hand.
Well, I knew the other one like that.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm very visual, so I'm looking at this now and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like I'm
There-
brand new.
There are so many changes in the
I
clauses.
hate it.
You're gonna have to read through it,
And
unfortunately.
you can read through, but you go through and you're just like.
Yep,
you know,
yeah, I agree, but I'm glad you guys came. I mean, I'm just doing it from the escrow point of view. I'm not doing it from the real estate side and going through the whole thing, but things that I have to pick out of the contract that go in my instructions that I have to make sure I look out for. So, I mean, I at least want to make sure like realtors know what escrow is looking for, that I'm seeing things missing. These are all the things that when I get an escrow, I'm missing. They're not checked. They're not, the dollar amount's not there. I know it sounds silly, like, because you would think I wouldn't miss that, but people are doing it. So I think it was important for me to bring this up and bring it to everyone.
It is, and it'll just take us all time, like the other one, we could just go bing, bing, bing,
Yeah.
bing, bing, and
Yeah.
eventually this one will be that too, but it's
Right.
so annoying.
Oh,
that it's new,
absolutely. We're all
you know?
getting there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to I'm glad you guys, and please let me know if you have any questions. I don't know how to do that here, Cindy, like if people have asked questions, like do I click on something? I think just Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan. I love Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, you do. Oh, never mind, don't click there.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Screen share? Oh, Anyone have any questions? I see participants.
Oh, hi, Sarah, I have a quick question.
Christine, hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, good.
So I know we've talked about the loan signing agent or the notary. So where does that go? Is there a certain line that you would put, like, you put who you want for escrow and for title and?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. And to be honest, it's not something typically that people put in. I automatically always estimate it because I know we will have notary fees on both sides.
Okay.
But if you do want to put it in your contract, that way the buyer is aware they do have to pay a notary fee, or the seller has to pay a notary fee if applicable or whatever. I mean, you could put it here where it says other, blank fees, blank costs, buyer, and you can put, notary fees.
Is that page 3?
Yes. Oh, page 3. Because the notary fee for the buyer, if they have a loan, it's, $250. So that's another fee that you can just confirm with escrow that the buyer is going to pay. I mean, it's basically automatic because we have loan docs from the buyer. They have to be signed. They have to be notarized. So they have to pay it. But if you want to just this helps the buyer become more aware of what to expect. Here's a good place to put the notary fee.
On which Q like 17, or where would you put it?
Yeah, I would say Q16
R.
or 17. Yeah.
16 or 17, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, of course. Good to chat with you. Bye, see you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So quiet. Okay, I guess that's
Do you have
it.
any business cards?
I do. I have business cards at the front. I have business cards at my desk. If there's anything you guys need ever, please feel free to reach out. I am going to put my phone number on here in the group if you need me. I'm going to put you're so welcome, Trish. Thanks for coming. My pleasure.
Who else is part of your office?
Maricela is also part of my office. I have 2 different email addresses, so I'm going to put both on here. If you guys ever need anything. Oh, good. Thanks, Carrie. So glad. Please let me know if I can help. Ever. Even if it's not my escrow, I'm happy to answer questions.
So what's the phone number?
Oh.
961. This is the office number, right?
Yes. So all 3 of us.
Sarah, and the last name,
Handley.
Are you still recording?
Oh, I think I am. I don't know how to stop. Oh.
and it's Pacific Escrow, right?
Yes, Pacific C, 2 C's.
Oh, Pacific.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Oh, there's a new message.
Oh, do you mind if I just get the emails?
Oh, Christine, I love her. Amazing.
Where's the emails? Can you
I'll
go
go
look?
get you my
Oh,
phone
yeah.
too.
Sorry.
Yeah,
See there?
definitely.
Sarah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Let me turn off the-